In 1837, a Chinese man fails a civil service exam, has a nervous breakdown, and wakes up believing he is the literal brother of Jesus Christ. Within 15 years, 20 million people are dead. His name is Hong Xiuquan. Born in 1814 in a small Hakka village in Guangdong Province, southern China. His family scrapes together every coin they have to fund his education because in Qing Dynasty China, there is exactly one path out of poverty, the imperial civil service examination. Hong is brilliant. His village calls him a prodigy. But the exam? The exam is a meat grinder. Only 1% of candidates pass. Hong fails. He tries again. He fails again. And again. And again. For attempts over 16 years. Each failure is not just personal humiliation. It's a catastrophe for his entire family, who has bankrupted themselves funding his studies. After the fourth failure in 1837, something inside Hong Xiuquan breaks. He collapses. He's carried home delirious, raving, thrashing in his bed for days. And that's when the visions begin. In his fevered delirium, Hong sees a golden-bearded old man seated on a throne, surrounded by blinding light. The old man hands him a sword and tells him he has a divine mission, to slay demons that have infested the world. Beside the old man stands a middle-aged figure who calls Hong brother. Hong has no idea what any of this means. He recovers. 6 years pass. And then, in 1843, he picks up a pamphlet that changes everything. The pamphlet is called Good Words to Admonish the Age, written by a Chinese Christian convert named Liang Afa. Hong reads it, and a detonation goes off in his mind. Suddenly his vision makes perfect sense. The golden-bearded old man? That was God. The figure who called him brother? Jesus Christ. Hong Xiuquan becomes utterly, unshakably convinced that he is the Son of God, the younger brother of Jesus, sent to purge China of demons. And the demons are the Manchu rulers of the Qing Dynasty. Now, most people would hear this claim and walk away. But 1840s China is a powder keg. The Qing Dynasty has just been humiliated by Britain in the First Opium War. Famine stalks the countryside. Taxes are crushing. Millions of peasants, especially the Hakka ethnic minority, outsiders, discriminated against for generations, are desperate for someone, anyone, to tell them a better world is possible. And Hong Xiuquan is telling them exactly that. He starts baptizing converts in the rivers of Guangxi province. He calls his movement the God Worshippers Society. And it grows. Not in the dozens. Not in the hundreds. In the tens of thousands. Hong's followers smash Buddhist temples. They burn Confucian texts. They destroy ancestral tablets. Acts so shocking in Chinese culture that it's the equivalent of burning down a cathedral in medieval Europe. The Qing government barely notices. They're too busy dealing with floods, rebellions elsewhere, and the aftershocks of the Opium War. That indifference will cost them everything. On January 11th, 1851, Hong Xiuquan's 37th birthday, he does the unthinkable. He declares the founding of a new nation, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, with himself as the Heavenly King, God's chosen son, Jesus Christ's brother. This is not a protest. This is not a petition for reform. This is an open declaration of war against the most populous empire on earth. His followers number around 20,000. The Qing Dynasty commands armies of over 1 million soldiers. By every rational measure, Hong Xiuquan should be dead within weeks. But what happens next defies every expectation, because this ragtag army of true believers starts winning. And they don't just win skirmishes, they conquer entire provinces. The Taiping army sweeps north like a storm. They pour out of the mountains of Guangxi and into Hunan, then Hubei. Along the way, something remarkable happens. Their army doesn't shrink from casualties. It grows. Every village they pass through, thousands more join. Miners, farmers, river pirates, entire communities of the dispossessed. By the time they reach the Yangtze River, Hong's forces have swelled to over 500,000. The Qing army, riddled with corruption, undertrained, and demoralized, shatters against them again and again. Most historians don't realize that the Taiping military machine was, at its peak, one of the most disciplined fighting forces in Asia. They had strict codes of conduct, organized divisions, and something the Qing troops desperately lacked. They believed they were doing God's work. March 19, 1853. The Taiping army storms the walls of Nanjing, one of the most important cities in China. The battle is savage. When it's over, the Taiping slaughter tens of thousands of Manchu residents, men, women, children, in a massacre that turns the Yangtze red. Hong Xiuquan renames the city Tianjin, the heavenly capital. He moves into a former imperial palace and declares that a new era has begun. The Taiping Heavenly Kingdom now controls a territory with roughly 30 million people. That's larger than every European country at the time except Russia. A man who failed his civil service exam now rules a nation. But something is already beginning to rot at the heart of his kingdom. Inside the Heavenly Kingdom, Hong implements reforms that are staggering for 1850s China, and, honestly, staggering for 1850s anywhere. Women are declared equal to men. Foot binding is banned. Land is redistributed to peasants. Private property is abolished. Opium, alcohol, tobacco, gambling, prostitution, all outlawed. Women serve in the army. Women take civil service exams. Historians have largely overlooked how radical this was. These ideas wouldn't gain traction in the West for another half-century. But here's the dark paradox that's about to tear everything apart. While Hong preaches equality for all, he is building himself a harem of 88 concubines inside a forbidden palace that no man is allowed to enter. By 1856, Hong Xiuquan has retreated almost entirely from governance. He spends his days writing incomprehensible religious proclamations and studying his own revised version of the Bible. The actual running of the kingdom falls to his generals, the so-called kings of the Taiping. And now, these kings turn on each other. In September 1856, the Eastern king, Yang Xiuqing, who claims he can channel the voice of God himself, demands that Hong grant him equal status. Hong's response is breathtaking in its brutality. He orders the northern king, Wei Chonghui, to eliminate Yang. Wei doesn't just kill Yang. He massacres Yang's entire household, then keeps killing. 20,000 people are slaughtered in the heavenly capital in a single purge. The Taiping kingdom is eating itself alive. And now the outside world gets involved. Britain and France, fresh from the Second Opium War, decide that the Qing Dynasty, weak as it is preferable to a Christian theocratic madman controlling China's richest trade routes. They throw their support behind the Qing. An American mercenary named Frederick Townsend Ward assembles the ever-victorious army, a hybrid force of Western-trained Chinese soldiers armed with modern rifles and artillery. When Ward is killed in battle, command passes to a British officer whose name will echo through history, Charles Chinese Gordon. City by city, the Taiping kingdom contracts. The Noose around Nanjing tightens. Zheng Guofan's Xiang army, a ruthless Qing loyalist force, besieges the heavenly capital. Inside, the population is starving. Hong Xiuquan tells his followers to eat weeds. He calls them sweet dew. On June 1st, 1864, Hong Xiuquan dies. Officially, from illness. Almost certainly from eating the very weeds he prescribed to his people, possibly poisoned, possibly by his own hand. He's buried in his palace. Weeks later, on July 19th, Qing forces breach the walls of Nanjing. What follows is one of the most complete destructions of a city in human history. The Qing army massacres over 100,000 people. Taiping loyalists set the city ablaze rather than surrender. Hong's body is exhumed, and his remains are burned in a cannon and fired into the sky so that, according to the Qing, his soul can never rest. The brother of Jesus Christ is obliterated. His kingdom, which once ruled 30 million souls, is ash. The final death toll of the Taiping Rebellion, 20 to 30 million people. Let that number settle. It's more than the total military deaths of World War I. It's more than the combined populations of most nations at the time. Some provinces in China lost over half their population. The Yangtze Delta, one of the richest regions on Earth, was reduced to wasteland. Entire cities simply ceased to exist. And yet most of the Western world has never heard of it. History textbooks give it a paragraph, maybe two. The deadliest civil war in human history, started by one man's hallucination, fueled by millions of people's desperation for something to believe in, and it's treated as a footnote. A failed exam. A fever dream. A pamphlet picked up on a street corner. That's all it took. 20 million lives, erased, because one man's delusion arrived at the exact moment a civilization was desperate enough to follow it. And if you think that kind of thing only happens in history, you haven't been paying attention.